There was an old woman who lived in her shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread, then scolded them soundly and sent them off to bed. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread, then scolded them soundly and sent them off to bed. There was an old woman who lived in her shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread, then scolded them soundly and sent them off to bed. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread, then scolded them soundly and sent them off to bed.
Welcome once again to the DarkSide Histories of Nursery Rhymes. Parental discretion is advised. Now, there was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do, so she gave them some broth without any bread, and she whipped them all soundly and sent them to bed, as you heard just a little while ago of it. This may just sound like a nonsense rhyme, but it does have a real meaning behind it. Like so many so-called nursery rhymes, it was political in origin, dating from the reign of King George II of Great Britain, his reign ranging from approximately about 1727 to 1760. George was the second king of the Hanoverian dynasty, which the current royal family are descended. Coming to the throne in about 1727, but he was not very popular with the British public. He had been born abroad and found the English language difficult. He also found the business of governing not to his liking and tended to leave the major decisions to his much more able wife, Queen Caroline, or Caroline, depending on how you want to pronounce it. He therefore acquired the nickname of the Old Woman. He also found that the leading minister of the day, Sir Robert Walpole, was able to control Parliament, that he had very little influence over what the members of Parliament did. They were therefore the unruly children of the rhyme. Many people in the country had been ruined by their bursting of the South Sea bubble in 1721, and King George was keen to involve Britain in foreign wars, notably the series of struggles that became known as the War of Austrian succession between approximately 1740 to 1748, which means that there was very little money in the public purse, broth without any bread. The king demanded that Parliament should remain in constant session and that its members should attend every day to vote the way he wanted them to, although, as mentioned above, it was Walpole who really controlled matters. A demand that the MPs vote in a certain way is referred to as a whip, which derives from the whippering on the hunting field who kept the hounds in line. The children were therefore soundly whipped and sent to bed, namely the House of Commons. The shoe in the rhyme could also be a reference to marital fertility as symbolized by the throwing of shoes as the bride and groom left for their honeymoon. George and Caroline, also certainly fertile, having 8 surviving children. The old woman rhyme was therefore a way of poking fun at the inadequacies of an unpopular king, which in meaning hidden in such a way that anyone reciting it could not be accused of directly insulting King George. Now, the different parts also along with it, if you look at it, there was an old woman who lived in a shoe. Now, you can be also interpreted as an older lady who had children, but weren't always all her own, kind of foster care, etc., etc. So she didn't know what to do. So she had a hard time trying to take care of them. Could be just a caregiver of a bunch of children, whether they're hers or not. So she gave them some broth, meaning she fed them without any bread, fed them very little. And then she whipped them all soundly and sent them to bed, saying that, she beat the bottoms because they were a handful, and then sent them off to bed. Now, there was a little bit longer parts of it were that she went off looking for a coffin, and then she came back home and they were all aloft. Now, it could be meaning a few different things. One of them suggested that they were actually sick with some form of plague. It could have been the Black Plague, could have been another plague back then, and whipped them to bed, meaning sending them to bed very quickly because they were all sick, and then going out to actually find coffins because they were dying to lay them to rest. So, there's a couple of different ways of looking at this. That's just 2 of the main dark side histories to the old woman who lived in a shoe. Until next time, these are dark nursery rhymes, and their actual true dark meanings behind them, not as the typical children's stories as we once were told.